Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now tell us real, whose door are you knocking on?
Betsy Ross.
She's not lying. This is Teresa knocking on Betsy Ross's front door at the Betsy Ross house. Would you like to tell us what Betsy Ross is most known for in American history?
Making the first flag.
Indeed it is. And
she's a great girl.
It's interesting, though, to think about the fact that Betsy Ross did make the first flag for the United States of America.
'Twas indeed George Washington who wanted me to make a flag. And then Betsy unfurled the flag.
Betsy, please show us your flag.
Ta-da!
Betsy Ross, of course, is a fascinating story. It's an inspiring story. It is a story that leads us to go, wow. But the sad part is, it's almost totally untrue.
The flag, designed by Frances Hopkinson, becomes known as the Stars and Stripes.
Another site in Philadelphia is Betsy Ross's house. She made the first United States flag.
Sounds nice. Sounds inspiring. Yes, she was a seamstress. Sure. She made pennants for ships. Yeah.
Frances Hopkinson is that he was the one chosen while on the Naval Board to design the American flag. Now, we usually think Betsy Ross when we think of designing the American flag, but...
And it turns out, of course, that we didn't hear about Betsy Ross until her grandson decided to talk about it a little bit. Now, I don't know why it took so long for anyone in the Ross family to talk about this, but they waited until it was near the time of the centennial celebration. And, of course, this member of the Ross family remembered hearing this from his grandmother when he was 6.
The birthplace of the American flag, the Betsy Ross house, is celebrating the day.
Today, Positively Philly is bringing you to the Betsy Ross house. It's a place where tourists and natives come to appreciate the history of our city. But Ross, thanks for having us.
Oh, indeed, it is my pleasure to have. Well, they came to me with a design for a flag. Now, as we are in an upholstery shop, you may be able to tell, upholstery is my trade, not flag making.
Right.
I had never made a flag before in my life. I told them as such, and I said, well, I do not know, but I will try. And they brought me a design for a flag. And of course, I could complete it, but I did have a few suggestions.
And remembered everything in startling detail. And that was that in 1776, before there was a Declaration of Independence, we wanted to have a new flag for the country. George Washington and 2 other individuals who supposedly were close to the Ross family came and gave the idea of what the flag should look like. And they said, Betsy, we need a flag. And she made various suggestions on how the flag should be designed, the size of the stars, and all that fun.
That Betsy Ross, a Philadelphia seamstress, made the first true flag using stars and stripes. 3 distinguished patriots, headed by General Washington himself, brought her a design using stars with 6 points. She showed them that it was easier to cut a 5-pointed star. The committee accepted her suggestion. And in that quiet room, Betsy Ross made the first American flag.
It's a great story. And the story gets better as time goes by because more is added to the story and embellished.
So on June 14, 1777, Continental Congress passed this memorable resolution.
Resolved that the flag of the United States be 13 stripes, alternate red and white, and the Union be 13 stars.
From those simple words, Frances Hopkinson perfected the design.
This is Frances Hopkinson, and if you didn't know, he is famously known as the man who created the very first flag of the United States of America.
Flag Week, and what better place to celebrate than the birthplace of the nation? Eyewitness News at the Betsy Ross house on 2nd and Arch today. George Washington was on hand to share the tale of how his request made Betsy Ross the first lady of the Stars and Stripes flag.
Hi, I'm here at the Betsy Ross house, another place you must visit when you come to the Philadelphia area. I'd like to introduce you to Lisa Mulder, who's the director of this fabulous, quaint little place. Thanks for having us.
Sure.
What room are we in? Flag, right?
Well, the flag wasn't made in this room. It would have been considered an act of treason to make the flag, so she couldn't do it in a public place like her workshop. Any customer could come off the street and they may be loyal to the British Crown, so she would have had to do it in a place that was much more private, like her bedchambers upstairs.
Now, this is a clipping for the history of the American flag as of 1850. And it talks about going through the records of the Continental Congress. And it states right here, if I may, that it was Continental Congress resolved in June the 14th, 1777, that the flag of the United States will be 13 stripes, alternate red and white, and that the Union be 13 stars, white on a blue field, representing a new constellation. Now, this wonderful story goes through its entire history. The only person missing from it is Betsy Ross. Every history I have read of the American flag prior to the 1870s mentions lots of information but does not mention Betsy Ross.
As the story goes, it was summer 1776 when General George Washington and other founders from the Continental Congress walked into respected seamstress Betsy Ross's Philadelphia home with a layout of the first American flag. She finalized the design, opting for 5 pointed stars instead of 6, and then made our nation's first flag. This flag. The problem is, this flag design didn't exist, according to scholars.
Pretty well known to be missed.
We called Jeff Bridgman, lecturer, researcher, and largest antique flag collector in the U.S.
The story wasn't even told until about 1870, when her grandson wrote a paper to the Pennsylvania Historical Society that for the first time detailed that meeting.
Here's the thing most history books leave out. Congress's first Flag Act in 1777 stated that our flag will have 13 alternating red and white stripes and 13 white stars over blue. They did not say where to put those stars. Bridgman, who's curated the first ever 13-star flag exhibition at the Museum of the American Revolution in Philly, says none of our first flags had the stars arranged in a circle. If the 13 stars in a circle was not the original design, what was the original design that was used for 100 years after the Declaration?
Nobody knows. All sorts of different patterns were used. There's a circle with one in the center, a 3-2-3-2-3 pattern of rows, stars forming one big star, called the Great Star pattern. At least 80-some different star patterns are known. There was no official star pattern for the flag until 1912.
Furthermore, if you look at paintings from the early 1800s, like this 1810 painting of the surrender of Lord Cornwallis, the flag shown has the stars in a rectangle and one in the middle. So you wonder, how did the Ross story come about? Well, Bridgman says it was first published by Ross's grandson about 100 years later as an oral history from Betsy. A man named Charles Weisgerber painted the tale in 1893, bought Ross's old house and opened it up to the public, and boom, history was written. In conclusion, so what we know is we don't know.
That's right.